Hello and welcome to our channel. In this video, we'll be discussing the life and crimes of one of America's most notorious serial killers, Gary Ridgway. Ridgway is believed to have killed more than 70 women during his reign of terror in the 1980s and 1990s. Please make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon to be notified about our amazing upcoming informative videos. Now sit back, relax, and let's go. Early life. Gary Ridgway was born in Salt Lake City, Utah, in 1949. He was the second of 3 sons and had a troubled relationship with his mother. She was often abusive towards him and his siblings, and this had a lasting impact on Ridgway's mental health. He later claimed that he began having violent fantasies at an early age and that he would often torture animals as a child. As a teenager, Ridgway struggled in school and was often in trouble with the law. He dropped out of high school and joined the Navy in 1969, where he served for a year before being discharged. After leaving the Navy, Ridgway returned to Washington State, where he worked as a truck painter and continued to have violent fantasies. Criminal history. Ridgway's criminal history began in 1982 when he was arrested for soliciting a prostitute. He was eventually released and went on to commit his first murder in 1982. The victim was a 16-year-old girl named Wendy Lee Caulfield, whose body was found in the Green River near Seattle. Over the next 2 decades, Ridgway would continue to kill, often targeting sex workers and vulnerable women. He would lure them into his car, strangle them, and then dump their bodies in remote locations, making it difficult for authorities to identify them. Ridgway's victims ranged in age from teenagers to women in their 30s and 40s, and many of them were never reported missing, which made it even harder for authorities to track down the killer. Despite the high number of murders committed by Ridgway, it took authorities a long time to connect the dots and realize that they were dealing with a serial killer. The police investigation was hampered by a lack of resources and a lack of cooperation between different agencies. It wasn't until 2001 that DNA evidence linked Ridgway to 4 of the murders. He was eventually arrested and charged with the murders of 48 women, although he has since claimed to have killed even more. Investigation and arrest. The investigation into Ridgway's crimes was one of the largest in U.S. history. It involved dozens of law enforcement agencies, forensic scientists, and criminal profilers. The police used a variety of tactics to try and catch the killer, including stakeouts, undercover operations, and DNA testing. One of the key breakthroughs in the case came in 2001 when the police used a new DNA technology to link Ridgway to the murders of 4 women. The DNA evidence came from semen samples found on the victims' bodies and clothing. The police used this evidence to obtain a warrant to collect a DNA sample from Ridgway, which confirmed his involvement in the murders. Ridgway was arrested in 2001 and initially denied any involvement in the murders. However, when confronted with the DNA evidence, he eventually confessed to killing dozens of women. He later claimed that he could not remember the exact number of his victims but estimated that he had killed around 70 women. Trial and sentencing. Ridgway's trial began in 2003, and he ultimately pleaded guilty to 48 counts of murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He later made a plea deal and agreed to provide information about his other victims in exchange for a promise that he would not receive the death penalty. This information led to the identification of several more victims and helped bring closure to their families. Ridgway's sentencing was the end of a long and difficult chapter in American history. It was a reminder that even in modern times, serial killers could still go undetected for years, despite the best efforts of law enforcement. It was also a reminder of the devastating impact that these crimes can have on the families and loved ones of the victims. Impact of Gary Ridgway's crimes. The impact of Gary Ridgway's crimes is still felt today. The Green River Killer, as he came to be known, was responsible for the deaths of more than 70 women, many of whom were young, vulnerable, and from marginalized communities. His crimes brought national attention to the issue of violence against women and the need for better support and protection for sex workers. Ridgway's case also highlighted the importance of DNA evidence in criminal investigations. Without the advances in DNA technology, it is likely that Ridgway would have continued to evade detection for many more years, and many of his victims would have remained unidentified. Furthermore, Ridgway's crimes led to changes in the way that law enforcement agencies work together to solve complex cases. The case was one of the first to use a task force approach, where multiple agencies work together to share information and resources. This approach is now widely used in the investigation of serial crimes and has been credited with helping to solve other high-profile cases, including the Zodiac Killer and the Golden State Killer. In conclusion, the case of Gary Ridgway is a chilling reminder of the capacity for human evil. His crimes left a lasting impact on the families and loved ones of his victims, as well as on society as a whole. However, his case also represents a triumph of modern forensic science and the determination of law enforcement to bring justice to those who have been wronged. While it is impossible to undo the harm that Ridgway caused, we can honor the memory of his victims by continuing to work towards a world where violence against women is not tolerated, and where law enforcement agencies work together to bring perpetrators to justice. It is our hope that by remembering the victims of this case, we can prevent similar tragedies from occurring in the future. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.